Rachel felt her world crumble when she lost her sight after an accident, but the darkness that now surrounded her was even greater inside her own home. She suspected her husband, Kevin, but could prove nothing. That's when she decided to pretend she was still blind, a silent weapon to uncover what he was really hiding. What is Kevin trying so hard to hide? How far is Rachel willing to go to find the truth? And is she prepared for what she'll discover? Get ready for a thrilling story full of twists and turns and courage. Don't miss this thrilling journey. Follow the channel and stay up to date with the most incredible stories that will touch your heart.
Rachel Williams has always believed in the power of love combined with trust. Ever since she met Kevin Williams, she felt she had found something rare, a connection that would weather life's storms. Rachel, a vibrant black woman full of dreams and courage, and Kevin, a calm white man with an aura of mystery, seemed like the perfect couple. But as she famously said to herself, trust is like delicate glass. Once broken, it's never the same again. On that sunny morning, the sky reflected the hope Rachel tried to hold on to, even when her heart was restless. In her quiet neighborhood, a seed of doubt was beginning to germinate. Kevin's small gestures and disappearances, which had previously gone unnoticed, now caught her attention. Unexpected delays, dropped calls, furtive glances. "Kevin, you were late again yesterday," she said, trying to keep the anxiety out of her voice. He replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It was just work, Rachel, nothing to worry about." But Rachel felt the weight of the lie hidden in that nothing. Behind her husband's calm facade lay a secret, something he kept to himself. She wanted to believe it was just stress, that their marriage wouldn't be shaken by the shadow of doubt. After all, trusting was an act of bravery. At night, when the house fell silent, Rachel couldn't escape her disturbing thoughts. Is he cheating on me? The question echoed loudly, but she resisted hearing it. She still trusted Kevin, because love doesn't easily give in to doubt. But fate had a different plan. That afternoon, as she climbed the stairs to her house, Rachel lost her balance. Her world fell apart in an instant. She felt her body fall, the fierce impact knocking the air from her lungs. She was rushed to the hospital. There, Dr. Samuel Turner, a gentle and calm man, delivered the news that no heart wants to hear. "Rachel, your fall caused serious damage to your optic nerve. You will be blind for a period of time, possibly indefinitely." Rachel could barely breathe. Fear took over. "I can't, not now," she whispered, her voice shaky and confused. Kevin held her hand, trying to provide comfort, but Rachel noticed his gaze shift, as if he were hiding something. In the darkness that was now part of her reality, Rachel clearly saw the change in Kevin's behavior. Small details, silent lies he tried to hide. When trust begins to break but love persists, what's left? How do we protect what we believe in when everything seems to be falling apart? Rachel heard in her mind the voice of her friend Claire Mitchell, a voice of wisdom. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that something is more important than fear. And that's exactly what Rachel would have to be, brave. She didn't know that that physical fall would be the beginning of a journey where her soul would be tested, where the light she needed to find came not from her eyes, but from her indomitable spirit. Rachel Williams's world had darkened, not just from the sudden blindness, but from the growing sense that everything in her life was about to change. The days in the hospital were the hardest. Accustomed to an active and independent routine, she now depended on others for the simplest tasks. Kevin was by her side the entire time in those early days, his voice a ray of hope amidst the darkness that now permeated her existence. But Rachel couldn't help but notice the small details that tormented her. He spoke in low tones on the phone, left doors locked without explanation, and his expression, once open and welcoming, became closed and tense. "Kevin, is everything okay?" she asked one day, her voice thick with doubt. He hesitated, then replied with a slightly forced smile. "Sure, love. Just a little stress. Nothing to do with you." She wanted to believe. She still trusted. But doubt was a shadow that grew silently. In the first few days after the accident, Rachel felt the weight of her new reality. Losing her sight was an experience that robbed her not only of her physical sight, but also of her confidence in the certainties of love and life. The feeling of vulnerability was overwhelming. As she tried to adapt, she remembered the phrase Claire repeated to her, an almost sacred mantra. "In the darkness, it is courage that guides us." And it was this courage that, in the midst of the confusion, made her think of something bold. Once home, regaining her strength, Rachel realized she could let go of her momentary blindness and use it as a weapon. If Kevin believed she was still blind, perhaps she could observe, understand what was happening, and discover the truth behind his mysterious behavior. In the silence of a calm night, she smiled to herself. "If hiding the truth is your plan, I have mine." In that instant, a clandestine plan was born, a farce with a true purpose. To illuminate the darkness, sometimes you have to dive into it. In that moment of decision, Rachel felt she was taking back control of her life, even when the world around her seemed to deny it.
In the days following Rachel's decision, the Williams household felt a different kind of silence. It was a silence fraught with tension, with unspoken secrets, but above all, with restless anticipation. Rachel was determined to feign blindness to achieve something the truth still wouldn't allow her to: see her husband's true face. She was gradually recovering from her injury, but still maintained the delicate expression and gestures of someone who depends on help for everything. To those observing from the outside, Rachel remained blind. To those on the inside, she was a warrior in disguise, increasingly attentive and alert. Kevin continued his cautious demeanor, alternating moments of affection with others of impassive silence. The unasked questions hung in the air, but Rachel now controlled the game. "Rachel, are you sure you want to do this?" her friend Claire asked in a worried phone call. "I can't wait any longer, Claire. I need to know the truth, even if it hurts. Pretending not to see is the only way to see now," she replied firmly. Thus began Rachel's routine, a double routine. On one side, the wife who learned to adapt to the world of shadows. On the other, the researcher who used her blindness, which allowed her to be seen, to her advantage, to uncover the secrets Kevin kept. During this time, she learned to listen to sounds and analyze the small details that previously went unnoticed. She stayed awake nights, listening to phone conversations, memorizing words, analyzing voice timbres, and even recognizing footsteps. Today, what had previously seemed like an ordinary marriage was beginning to reveal itself as an intricate puzzle. At the height of this effort, Rachel realized that Kevin kept a locked room in the house, a place he visited at night, avoiding daily contact. Suspicion grew like a burning flame. "Kevin, why don't you ever let me in that room?" she asked one night, feigning weakness in her voice, before answering, "It's just a place with old things, nothing important." But she sensed there was something more there, a secret too heavy to share. In the silence of that home, Rachel began to piece together a web of information. She had to be cautious, because Kevin would subtly let slip that he suspected her prolonged blindness. "Be careful, Rachel. In the darkness, not everything is what it seems." Claire's words echoed in her mind as well. But she wouldn't back down. The truth, however harsh, needed to be illuminated, because only those who see through the heart know when the soul needs courage. As the days passed, Rachel managed to gather small pieces of evidence: messages on Kevin's phone,
which he'd carelessly left within reach, an exchange of papers she'd observed from afar and mentally noted. She felt like an archaeologist of truth, excavating layer by layer of soil that threatened to swallow her. She knew there was something much bigger than betrayal, something heavier, darker. The mystery of the key to the locked room was the centerpiece of that board. And then, on one of those days when your heart wants to run away and your mind wants to move on, Rachel saw Kevin walking into that room after an urgent hookup, his expression tense. She waited until he left and her heart racing, approached the door, locked and cold. "What are you hiding there, Kevin?" she thought. Without an answer, but with the determination of someone who won't stop until he finds out. At that moment, the double life of marriage began to overflow, threatening to destroy everything she had ever known.
With each passing day, Rachel's determination to uncover what Kevin was hiding grew like an unstoppable flame. She had now become a silent observer, attentive to every small detail, listening and seeing with a keenness few would imagine possible for someone pretending to be blind. That morning, as the sun gently streamed through the living room window, Rachel seized a moment when Kevin was absent to silently try to approach the locked room. The door was solid, and the lock seemed to defy her will. She didn't have the key, but that only increased her desire to unravel the mystery. Meanwhile, her nights were filled with increasingly strange episodes. Kevin received secret visitors, whispered in code on the phone, and in his eyes she saw a tension that was hard to hide. There was something much bigger at play, and she felt that each secret revealed could shake the foundations of the life she thought she knew. One night, as he walked away to take a call, Rachel, pretending to be asleep, heard only fragments that made her shiver. "The museum, the piece, we can't get it wrong this time." At that moment, a realization dawned on him. This was no ordinary betrayal. Kevin was involved in something serious, dangerous, a crime planned behind the scenes, hidden from the eyes of the world. Curiosity, which had previously been doubt, was now certainty. She needed concrete proof. Even with her feigned blindness, Rachel used her sharp memory and keen sense of smell to piece together a mental map of Kevin's routines. It was almost instinctive, a sixth sense born of urgency and wounded love. After days of vigilance and silence, she finally found her opportunity. When Kevin left for a meeting that seemed too important to be casual, Rachel used the spare key she'd found hidden during a discreet house cleaning. Her hand trembled, not from weakness, but from the adrenaline of the moment. Upon opening the bedroom door, she was met with a shocking surprise. The space was an elegant mix between a private office and a clandestine hideout. On the walls were detailed maps of famous museums, photographs of valuable artifacts, and notes detailing specific plans, dates, routes, names. She discovered that Kevin was the head of a gang specializing in museum robberies. The man she loved led a network of criminals who orchestrated robberies at museums, stealing valuable historical pieces for who knows what dark purposes. The shock was profound, but the courage Rachel was building only grew. She knew she couldn't back down. She studied the documents, the messages, and found evidence that could bring down the entire gang. Meanwhile, Kevin's image became increasingly complex in her mind. He wasn't just a loving husband or a cold-blooded criminal. He was a man imprisoned by his own fears and choices. Rachel remembered a phrase she had once heard in a book. "In the darkness, what we see is the reflection of the light we carry within." She wondered, could it be possible to save someone who had lost themselves in their own darkness?
From that moment on, Rachel realized that the battle she had begun by feigning physical blindness would also be a battle to see Kevin's soul. And so, each step she took became a step toward deciding how far she would go to save or destroy the man she loved. With the evidence in hand and her mind sharpened, Rachel felt the weight of the truth like a silent poison eating away at her peace. Kevin had become an enigmatic figure, a man difficult to decipher even for those who had shared so many moments together. She knew her plan was risky, but the alternative, living a lie, was no longer acceptable. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the Williams household became tense and fraught with unspoken secrets. Rachel, even feigning blindness, managed to observe subtle changes in Kevin's behavior. His steps became more cautious, his gaze shifted, and he began to control his conversations with an almost obsessive care. "Rachel, maybe you're being too hasty," Claire said on the phone, her voice thick with concern. "No, Claire, I need to know where this is going. He's involved in a robbery. I can feel it," Rachel replied with conviction. The feeling that something was about to explode consumed her. Throughout the night, she overheard clandestine phone conversations, fragments mentioning locations, times, and names she associated with local museums. "Tonight is crucial," said one of those voices that escaped through the walls. She understood that Kevin and his gang were planning a major robbery at an important museum in the city. Still, doubt lingered in her mind. What to do? Reporting it immediately could be a trap, and Kevin was the man she loved, even under the mask of a criminal. Claire's words came back like a flash in the darkness. Courage is acting in spite of fear, not the absence of it. Determination gripped Rachel. She resolved to intervene even amidst the darkness she pretended not to see. She had to protect herself, true justice, and, somehow, the man who had once offered her love. Kevin, for his part, began to show signs of nervousness. He suspected that Rachel wasn't as blind as she seemed. One particularly tense night, he whispered to himself as he crouched in the living room, "She's seeing more than she should." These words were a painful confirmation for Rachel, but also fuel for her fight. She knew danger was approaching. Every step she took toward uncovering Kevin brought her closer to an emotional and physical abyss. She needed to prepare for any eventuality. The battle was no longer just about love or trust. It was a fight for truth, for justice, and for their very survival. And so, in the silence of the night, while the city slept obliviously, Rachel Williams silently rose to face whatever was to come. Discovering the truth always brought with it a whirlwind of emotions. For Rachel, it was more than the initial shock. It was a painful invitation to see beyond the shadows, to understand the human complexities hidden in the actions of the one she loved. In the weeks following the revelation of Kevin's involvement in the museum theft ring, new layers of that story began to emerge, dismantling Rachel's image of her husband and reconstructing it in much more human and complicated fragments. One afternoon, while reviewing the notes she'd taken during her furtive moments in the locked room, Rachel found something that made her freeze. Among the documents and papers was an old envelope, discreet, almost forgotten. Inside were messages and evidence of a debt, a dark and dangerous debt, which Kevin hid from her out of pride and fear. The debt wasn't just financial. It was an invisible weight that dictated his steps and decisions. It was the result of a serious mistake years ago, an indirect involvement in an illegal lending scheme that spiraled out of control. He had tried to escape the situation through legal means, but it was clear that these options had failed and that the threats from the criminal underworld were real and relentless. Rachel could sense, for the first time, the true dimension of the man before her, not a cold villain, but a cornered man fighting to protect what he loved, even if it was the wrong way. She remembered the words of the therapist she had seen years ago, who always told her that we can't truly understand someone until we've walked a mile in their shoes. And now, even in the darkness, she sought to walk her husband's difficult path. One silent night, Rachel decided to confront Kevin in a conversation she would remember forever. "Kevin, I know about the debt," she said calmly, without accusing, looking into his eyes with a determination that surprised them both. He stared at her, eyes filled with weariness and regret, his masks falling in a split second. "Rachel, I never wanted you to know. I thought I was protecting you and our lives," he said, his voice hoarse, as if carrying invisible weights. He told her about the threats, the constant dangers, and how he had gotten involved in that gang to try to pay what he owed, believing that he would be able to finish everything quickly and return to her without those shadows. "I've done things that make me ashamed, but it was all to protect you. I never meant to hurt you." The honesty, though belated, was a moment of rupture and simultaneous connection between them. Rachel understood that there was something vulnerable about the man she loved, a man trapped by his own mistakes, but still seeking redemption. But the danger remained. The debt, the gang, and the threats wouldn't disappear easily. And by his side, Rachel understood that she could no longer trust blindly. She needed to be alert, protecting what she could still save. "We're going to get out of here," she said firmly. "Together. I'll help you, but I won't let this destroy us." A new alliance was forming in the silence of the house. Each knew their weaknesses, but also the hidden strengths that could rebuild their marriage. Rachel knew that from then on, the journey would be even more difficult. She would have to balance love and caution, trust and vigilance. It was no longer just a matter of uncovering mysteries, but of saving what remained. And deep down, she repeated her favorite phrase, "Courage is acting despite fear." Even though the fear was great, Rachel's courage was greater. The weight of truth now found a tricky path, filled with shadowy encounters, whispered words, and suspicious glances. Rachel, even pretending to remain blind, lived through days in which every second felt like a silent war between what she knew and what she had to reveal. Kevin, restless, could no longer hide the tension her presence aroused. He felt the walls closing in silently, fearful that this apparent darkness held a relentless light. On a night marked by the silence of the city, Kevin was in the office, speaking softly on the phone, his voice steady but marked by an almost imperceptible uneasiness. "I know she's suspicious, and that could bring us down." Rachel, across the room, listened to every word. Her heart was racing, but her mind was cool and calculating. This conversation was confirmation, a sign that her ruse was working. Later, when Kevin left the room to take another call, Rachel finally summoned the strength to confront him. There was no more room for veiled lies. "Kevin," she called, his voice firm, breaking him out of his silent routine. He stared at her, surprised by the confidence of the conversation, his eyes searching for some weakness, but found only determination. "I know what you're hiding," she began bluntly, "but I also know you're not just a villain or a criminal. Behind it all lies fear, debt, the weight you carry alone." A heavy silence fell over the room. Kevin took a deep breath, as if releasing a burden he'd been carrying for a long time. "Rachel," he began, his voice thick with regret, "I wanted to protect you from the truth, to keep you from suffering. But the debt, the threats, they were too real. I didn't know how to get out of this alone." She took a step forward, keeping her gaze fixed. "I don't need a perfect man, Kevin. I need a real man. Someone who accepts that life is hard, but who will fight with us. I'm not running away from here. We'll face this together." His face was racked with conflicting emotions, anger, fear, love, and relief. At that moment, the confrontation was more than a dispute of words. It was the manifestation of the complex relationship between love and fear, between lies and redemption. Rachel understood that she had entered the heart of darkness, not to condemn, but to illuminate. And Kevin, slowly but surely, allowed himself, for the first time, to be seen in all his humanity.
The tension in that house was palpable as never before. Rachel held in her hands the truth that could destroy Kevin and the entire gang. The date of the Grand Museum heist approached, and every second felt like a dagger stuck in her soul. The courage that had driven her now mixed with a deep fear, but she knew there was no turning back. That night, Kevin entered the room with a hard expression, his eyes alert to every movement, as if he sensed the web was closing in. He didn't suspect, however, the silent preparations Rachel was making inside, pretending to still be blind, but observing every detail. The gang had a meticulous plan. Infiltration during an exclusive exhibition, watchful eyes, calculated steps, and the promise of a perfect heist. But Rachel knew that the imperfect would be the salvation that awaited her that night. Using a hidden device, she sent anonymous messages to local police detailing what she knew. The clock was ticking, marked by rapid beats that reverberated in Rachel's heart. Upon arriving at the museum, Kevin felt the adrenaline of accomplishment, but something strange burned down his spine, signs that indicated the plan had been compromised. During the robbery, as the gang operated, security cameras captured every movement. Rachel, in the shadows, silently intervened, managing to create small obstacles and delays that proved decisive. When security agents stormed the scene, chaos ensued. Chase sequences, hurried steps, and split-second decisions marked that historic turning point. Kevin, torn between protecting his empire and the gaze of the woman who confronted him, had no choice. Impending prison was a consequence of his actions, but also a possibility of redemption. He was arrested as Rachel watched, tears mixing sadness and relief. Finally, the truth was laid before her, and despite the pain, she knew she had won. In that moment, Rachel felt the weight of the lie begin to lift, giving way to a future where courage and dignity would prevail. She looked at Kevin, now behind bars, without illusions, knowing that the true gaze was within each of them.
The sun shone shyly that morning. Kevin Williams was taken to prison. The bars that had previously been invisible to Rachel, made of the lies and secrets he hid, now became real, physical, and unforgiving. The couple's life, marked by love, pain, and discovery, reached its final turning point. In prison, Kevin found himself faced with the weight of the choices he had made. There, within the cold, silent walls, he had time to reflect on everything: the love he had tried to protect with tricks and secrets, the wife his soul had never truly managed to deceive, and the responsibility he now had to face before the law and before the woman who had never stopped wanting to see him whole. Rachel, in turn, felt freedom return. The life that had shrunk in the darkness of lies began to grow with the light of truth. It wasn't a simple victory, full of easy joys, but an achievement of courage, dignity, and transformation. In her apartment, she looked out the window, feeling the cool breeze as she repeated in a low voice, "Looking the truth in the eye, even when it hurts, is the first step to freedom." And that was what she had now: freedom to be, to choose, and to build a future without masks. The following days were spent rebuilding. Rachel leaned on friends like Claire, who offered her strength and words that lit the way. That dark chapter was over, and a new one was beginning to be written, one of hope, authenticity, and courage. Their last meeting took place during the prison visit. Kevin looked her in the eye for the first time, hiding nothing anymore. "I made a mistake, Rachel," he said humbly, "but I learned that there is no darkness that can extinguish the light of the one who has the courage to see." She smiled, feeling stronger than ever. "I see you now, Kevin. I really do. And this is the truth that will set us free, whatever our path." She walked away, no longer a prisoner of blind love, but free to see and love with the eyes of her heart. Months had passed since the day Kevin Williams was arrested, and Rachel Williams felt something new blossom within her. The pain of the past still throbbed, but there was room for hope and rebuilding. Free from the shadows cast by the blindness of lies, she was ready to write her own story, no longer as a wife held hostage by doubts, but as a woman in control of herself. Rachel's routine changed. She resumed her studies, delving deeper into art history, a passion that had grown even more intense since she learned the true face of that dark world Kevin had become part of. She decided to dedicate her life to valuing and preserving what her husband had stolen: culture, memory, the legacy of many generations. By her side was Claire Mitchell, a loyal friend who supported her with words and a constant presence. Together, they began a project to create a nonprofit focused on protecting museums and promoting arts education in the local community. During one of these meetings, Rachel received an unexpected letter from Kevin, sent from prison. He spoke of sincere repentance, the transformation that only truth can bring, and gratitude for the vision she had seen, not the vision of the eyes, but the vision of the heart. Despite the pain, Rachel felt her heart open again to reconciliation, no longer with the hope of reliving the past, but to forgive and move forward. One clear morning, walking through the garden of her apartment, Rachel reflected, "We are made of our choices, the battles we face, and the courage we have to rise from the ashes." She knew that the future was a blank canvas, and that the paint to paint it was in her hands. Whatever came her way, she was ready. And this time, she would be the artist of her own story.
The first few months after launching the organization were arduous, but also deeply rewarding for Rachel. Each exhibition organized, each child who stepped into a museum for the first time, each preserved work was a building block for her in the reconstruction not only of local culture, but of her own life. Art, which until then had been a scene of betrayal and crime, now took on new meaning. It was a symbol of renewal and hope. Claire was always by her side, offering support through bureaucratic challenges during nights of doubt and also in celebrating small achievements. For Rachel, that friendship was a safe haven that helped her keep her courage alive. However, personal reconstruction was not without its challenges. Kevin, in prison, continued to send heartfelt letters, seeking a dialogue that would bring understanding and, perhaps, forgiveness. Rachel read each word carefully, feeling torn between the painful past and the desire to not hold a grudge. During one of these nights, she wrote to Kevin, "Rebuilding is an act of courage, just like forgiving. Not to forget, but to free ourselves from the weight that prevents us from moving forward." She knew that true strength lay not in condemning, nor in forgetting, but in transforming. Meanwhile, the project grew, attracting local media attention and new partners. Rachel found herself speaking about the importance of cultural preservation, but also sharing her own journey, a story of darkness and light, of struggle and transformation. When life takes away our vision, it is the heart that needs to learn to see, she said in her presentations, moving audiences. Rachel's gaze was no longer that of someone pretending to be blind, but that of someone who truly sees life in its fullness, with all its pain and beauty. And in the process, she discovered a strength she never imagined she possessed, the strength to rebuild not just a home, but a soul. The future remained uncertain, but now Rachel walked with firm steps, ready for whatever came, knowing that more than ever, true vision lies within us. Thus, Rachel Williams' story became a powerful testament to courage, dignity, and transformation.
It was a story of a woman who, even in physical and emotional darkness, found the strength to see the truth, face her fears, and rebuild her life. Her journey wasn't just about uncovering hidden secrets, but about rediscovering herself and the ability to forgive, grow, and be reborn. If you were moved by this journey, which brings light and hope even in the most difficult times, be sure to follow our channel. Here you'll find more inspiring and engaging stories that demonstrate the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Join us on this journey of discovery and excitement. Click to follow, turn on notifications, and enjoy each chapter of these stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul. Until the next story.